There you go.
Thank you. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the fourth Lowestoft Ambassador event. Thanks for joining us today. It's great to see so many of you on the call. We think we had 62 registered for the event today. Obviously you can't see everybody because the nature of this type of seminar is that it's done in such a way as we don't get to see everyone's face because there's just so many potential people online. So please bear with us. As Gabby has explained, there is a box for you to be able to write questions in, and we'll come to that in due course. I'm your chair for today. My name's Phil Aves. I work for Lowestoft Rising, and I am the lead ambassador for mental health. And I've been part of the setup for the Lowestoft Ambassador Scheme from the very beginning. And I guess I was one of the pre-existing ambassadors for Lowestoft because Lowestoft had a mental health ambassador before we had an ambassador scheme. So it kind of made natural sense that I would become one of the Lowestoft ambassadors under this scheme, which is how I got involved. And as I say, my role at Lowestoft Rising is to connect people together. But then my secondary role is the spokesperson, if you like, on mental health issues. So my role around mental health, being the mental health ambassador, fitted nicely with this ambassador role. And we've asked different ambassadors to lead, chair each of these events as we've done them. And today is my turn, so you've got to put up with me. And that's my background history to this. So I have been part of the team with Gabby and Jason and Karen originally, who started this work to get this ambassador scheme together. In terms of housekeeping, before we start, I've got to do one or two bits. So you've already heard that the event is being recorded today. That's obviously for those who couldn't make it today and can catch up afterwards. So it's a recorded event. If you wish to submit a question, there is a question and answer box that you can type your question into throughout the event. If you don't want your name to appear on screen, then obviously you're going to have to select the anonymous box in the question and answer, and then your name won't appear. So just be aware of that. If you don't want to know anyone that you're here, use anonymous. And at the end of each of the four presentations we're going to have today, we will pause and Gabby will read out the questions, and we will see if we can get answers to those, either from the presenters or from our knowledge to answer those questions. And if we can't, then we'll find someone who can answer the question, and we'll come back to you all with the answer to any of those questions that we can't answer on the day. And we will, of course, be circulating any documents that are provided today and any presentations, so you don't have to make copious notes. You can sit and listen and take it in without having to worry about that. They will come to you afterwards through Gabby. Now, if you're new to one of these events, you may be wondering what this is all about and why you're here today. It's very much about the people on this call, hopefully, are people who've got a shared interest, passion and sense of pride in Lowestoft. The Ambassador Group was created to form a centralised place where private, public and voluntary sector organisations could be informed about the projects and activities in Lowestoft and identify opportunities where they might get involved or where they might be able to collaborate. Not that I'm reading from Gary's script at all. And we really did want this to be a place where people who'd shown an interest in the work we were doing through the Place Board could get updated as to what was happening and get the most up-to-date, correct information from the people leading the various projects, so that you could then go away and update your own employees, your clients, your customers, your friends and everyone else, and speak with a degree of authority, knowing that you'd been told the right things and that we could share some of the really important good news stories that are happening in Lowestoft. Because there was a feeling that actually, whilst we were doing some really good work, we never told anybody else about it. And if they ever found out about it, we were surprised that they knew about it. So this is the fourth event of these, a series of 8 events over 2 years. And the aim is that everyone will be engaged, everyone will know more about what's happening in the town. And if there's a burning issue that someone particularly wants, then please let us know and we'll try to update you on that. Today's theme is really about connectivity, and we've got 4 presenters today who are going to talk to us about various elements of connectivity, and my job is to connect all the 4 bits together and flow through the system. So on that basis, we're ready to start. Charles Kitchen is our first speaker today. He's from City Fibre, and he's going to take us through 5G ultra-fast broadband, which is going to be something that I know very little about, but hopefully we'll know a lot more afterwards. So Charles, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Phil. It's great to speak to you all. Great to see so many people in attendance. Apologies, I do recognise a couple of names on the list of delegates, so you might have heard some of this before, particularly Danny Steele. I know you've heard this several times. So, but what I'll do is I'm going to try and share my screen, and hopefully that one. Okay. Does that work? Can you see my screen? Yes, okay, good. So yeah, my name's Charles Kitchen. I'm the city manager. My job title is city manager. Of course, everyone points out to me that there aren't any cities actually in Suffolk, but I'm sort of area manager, and I cover Norfolk and Suffolk. And I'm just going to talk through who are City Fibre, what are we doing, why are we doing it, and then particularly what are we doing in Lowestoft. So City Fibre are a company that's been around about 10 years, but it's really the last 3 years it's really sort of taken off, and are looking to build a 3rd national network for providing broadband services across the UK. BT Openreach, of course, is a dominant player here. Virgin have a considerable network, but they don't cover everywhere. And City Fibre are looking to shake the market up and be the 3rd national provider. What's our backing? Where do we come from? Well, we're actually privately owned. We were taken off the stock market in June 2008, and we were acquired by a consortium of private sector investors, Antan Infrastructure Partners and Wall Street Infrastructure Partners, which is a trading arm of Goldman Sachs. Last month, we announced the exciting news that we've got 2 further investors. So Antan and Goldman Sachs, they put up £4 billion to help us achieve our ambition of connecting to 8 million homes across the UK. A month ago, we announced another £1.1 billion worth of investment from Mubadala Investments, an Abu Dhabi national investment arm, and Interrogo Holding, a company behind IKEA, for all things. So we now have approximately £5.1 billion of funding in place to roll out our ambition for the next 5 years. Why are we doing this? Well, this is all about upgrading the UK's digital infrastructure. The demand for internet services, global IP traffic, you can see in the graph on the left, as we all know, it's just going up and up and up, and so shows no sign of slowing down at all. On the right-hand side, the very right-hand side on my screen is covered up by some faces, but you can see that the UK, in terms of its fibre penetration, is way down to the right of that graph. We haven't been investing over the last decade in the way that many other countries have. Some you wouldn't be surprised. You've got on the left-hand side, you've got Korea and Japan. Some you might be a bit more surprised, Lithuania and Latvia. But those are companies that didn't have a sort of a legacy infrastructure. They sort of went in brand new and said, well, we're putting in brand new stuff. We don't have an old national infrastructure company, so they've gone straight in. So this is where we are at the moment, lack of investment, but increasing demand. It fits very much in with government policy, not just this government, but all parties are now agreed that this is an essential piece of infrastructure, essential utility. And so the targets for fibering up the nation, as it were, have been brought forward, and there's significant plans to achieve quite a lot by 2025. Now, of course, COVID has only really emphasized the importance of digital infrastructure, and here we are, 25, 30 of us on a call together. Probably might not have happened sort of a couple of years ago, but the pandemic has certainly brought into focus people working from home, people wanting to work from home, the importance of telemedicine, all these sorts of things. Just to emphasize what is full fiber, we do this in every presentation because most people, a lot of people I speak to say, oh, I've already got fiber. The language, the advertising around this is so confusing that we are bombarded daily by adverts talking about fibers and fastest fiber and lightning speeds. But the fact is that only 20% of the population now actually have fiber to the premises. What most people have is a fiber from the main exchange to a cabinet in the street. And the last element from the cabinet to a person's house is actually a copper cable. And that is where the performance drops off, because you're sharing that cable with everybody else on your street. And at busy times, you'll struggle in many areas to get your share of that copper cable. So although things will be advertised as fiber, they're not fiber to the premises. What we're building in Lowestoft and in various places, which I'll come on to in a sec, is a dedicated fiber cable all the way to the individual premises. That's a business or a residential premises. You're not sharing it with anybody else, it's yours. So there's no what we call contention. And also with a fiber cable, you can send and receive at the same speed. So whereas sending information tends to be slower with a copper cable, you can send and receive at the same speed with a full fiber connection. So where are we? So our target now we've got all this money a bit behind us, we're looking really to build to about 10 million homes. That's around 35–40% of the entire housing stock in the UK. We've already announced 292 towns and cities. I'll list those out in a sec. Excuse me. And we are an open access network. That means that we are not like Virgin, where you can only buy Virgin from the Virgin network. We're more like BT OpenReach. So we will invite any internet service provider, such as Vodafone, TalkTalk, Sky, whoever. They will all be able to use our network. So the first wave was 67 locations, and within that 67, you do have in Suffolk, you've got Ipswich, Lowestoft, and Bury St Edmunds. We're currently actually building in around 60 of those 67. So we're currently under construction there. We then announced a further 225 locations. And within Suffolk, you can pick out those ones there, but of most interest, perhaps for you with an interest in Lowestoft, we've got Beccles and Kessingland will also be part of the extended build. So once we've come to the completion of Lowestoft, we'll be looking at those two places, and also neighbour just across the border, Great Yarmouth will also be looking to start building probably towards the end of next year as we come to the end of the Lowestoft build. A little bit more detail on there. This is really just to highlight the rural element of this. Now we have this extra money behind us, we're really looking at how we can also service some of the rural areas, and that's of great interest to people across Norfolk and Suffolk, being such a rural area. The MPs always challenge me about, well, it's very nice for the towns and cities, but what about the rural constituencies? So we'll be looking at that as well, and that will be with the government projects that they have planned for next year, where they subsidise some of the work, so we can get some of the other areas done as well. I'll just talk briefly. I know I don't have a huge amount of time. I won't go through these. I'm happy to share these slides later. You'll probably be aware of what are the benefits of having a fibre to the home. The amount of smart technology in our homes is just increasing geometrically. Really, I did a test on my home here, and it told me that I have 24 devices connected to the internet. I do have 3 children, and they've all got iPads and smart TVs and got Alexas and all this sort of stuff, but more and more stuff is looking to connect to the internet. Those of people with younger children maybe also be interested in the home learning elements of this. As the schools have been closed, there's been a lot of demand and interest in how do we keep schools going remotely. So I've got this tickly cough. So yeah, it's not just about downloading and streaming Netflix more quickly. There's a whole host of things, but particularly of interest to gamers with these massive games that are data hungry. And as more and more TVs, 4K TVs come out, they all require greater resilience from the broadband. For communities, again, cover this, so I won't go into this in detail, but there's lots of smart technology that can be applied for businesses. And also we work a lot with housing associations on social housing and making sure that everybody's included. It's an important thing for us that when we build a city, we do every single premises in the city, town or city. We don't cherry pick the posh areas where we think we're going to get the most customers. We do everything, the prosperous areas and the less prosperous areas as well. So I'll just quickly talk about what it looks like. You hopefully will have seen us out and about in Lowestoft, but the structure is that there are the sort of 5 elements. We have a main exchange, then we have what we call primary node areas, secondary node areas, then individual points outside houses, and then connections on houses. So the main exchange basically sits in a large container. It's got all the clever gubbins, but everything feeds back to that single point. And there's one of these main exchanges in Lowestoft. From there, we have a main feeder network comes out. The one in, this is not actually the one in Lowestoft, but it can be like in there, it can be a box outside in the open, or as in Lowestoft, we do have the container inside a building. It then spreads out and goes to what we call a primary node. That's a chamber that sits underneath the pavement. You'll probably have walked across many of them. If you look down, it should say City Fibre on it, if it's one of ours. And each one of those is a sort of a connection box that can supply up to 480 properties. Typically, they do about 350 to 400, and we leave a bit of capacity. So that's a primary node. We then spread out into what you'll be more familiar with, which is what we call a secondary node, but it's those green cabinets that you'll see beside the street. And from there, each one of those can feed up to 48 premises, 48 houses. So that from there, you get 48 connections to individual properties where we leave what we call a Toby box. That's a little plastic box in the pavement outside the house, and that's where we stop. And we will then put fibre into that. And if somebody decides that they want to take a service using the City Fibre network via one of our internet service providers, there'll be another company will come in and put that connection in from the pavement to the house. And you'll get a little black box on the side of the house. They'll drill through, put a box on the inside of your house, and there you are, you're fibre connected. And that you have your dedicated fibre line that goes all the way back to our main exchange. So that's what the general architecture looks like. You'll see us out and about. We set up the site. It's quite, it's very expensive. We usually have to dig a trench, lay the individual fibres to each individual property, then reinstate on top as best we can to make it look as good as we can, have as little impact as possible, install the fibre, and then connect people. Where we can, we use telegraph poles, existing telegraph poles and existing BT infrastructure. We are allowed to use, if there's space on the BT infrastructure, we can use some of their infrastructure. So again, that means saves us a bit of digging if we can use existing telegraph poles. We put a little box at the top of the telegraph pole. If you look up at telegraph poles, you'll see all sorts of stuff at the top. And some of that will be our little boxes that can then sweep across using the existing lines, following the lines. Communications is very important because we know we cause disruption and people don't like having their roads dug up. So we do put a lot of work into making sure that people are aware that we're coming before we arrive, while we're there, just on-site branding, and then afterwards we follow up as well. We do quite a lot of, we try to do as much local PR as we can just to make sure people are aware of what's going on. So we'll put regular announcements out in the news. And we also look to do some local promotion and sponsorship of local events. If anybody's got any events that they think we should be at, or anything they'd like us to consider supporting that's particular to Lowestoft, then happy to look at that as well. So let's just lastly just focus in on Lowestoft. So I talked about primary node areas of making up about 400 properties per primary node area. In Lowestoft, we've got about just over 30,000 premises that we're looking to connect. That means 93 primary nodes, and the boxes that you can see on the map there, it might be difficult to see depending on your screen, but we build out each of those areas one at a time. As we go, as we finish one, the aim is to start and finish one, and when we finish one, we can then provide a service to that customer. We don't have to wait until the end of the project to make everybody live. We can go one area at a time. So we started in January 2020. We had a bit of a pause because we had poor working relationship with the first contractor we had in place, but we've got a new contractor in place now, much improved person. And those green areas on that map are the ones that are complete. So if you live in one of those areas, you can get a service now. The yellow areas are the ones we're moving into next over the next 3 months. And basically, we're working north of Lake Lothing and the river there. But we will have access across the river at 2 points, and we will be moving further south throughout next year. And we look to complete the entire town by the end of next year. Clearly, there's a lot going on in Lowestoft, a huge amount of projects, and we're about to hear about some more after me. But we have to work around the new Goldwing Bridge, around the river defences. We have to work with the county council and the highways to make sure we're not blocking any diversionary routes, and we have to be quite flexible about how we do that. Just to mention, as well as doing this fibre to the home build, we've also done a project with Suffolk County Council, where we've connected in Lowestoft 35 public sector sites, various schools and public services buildings onto their own network. You can buy today from Air Broadband, a internet service provider, Cambridge-based company, and also a company called In Touch Systems, who are Norwich-based, have also currently mobilising to provide services. And coming down the track in the next few months, we've got companies like Giganet, Vodafone, and TalkTalk. We also provide services for businesses. So I know there are a number of businesses on the call here. So if you're based in Lowestoft, happy to talk to you about what we can do for you there. There are various packages, but there's some new stuff coming along that if you're a smaller business and you don't want to go for the all singing, all dancing sort of fully fledged business products, there is some new products coming along that can be supplied through the fibre to the home network. So I think that's my last real sort of slide. If you're interested in finding out if you can connect or when you can connect, you just go onto the cityfibre.com website. There's a postcode checker. You just pop your postcode in, and we'll let you know, if you can connect already, or if you can't, we'll advise you when you can. So very exciting for Lowestoft. I think Lowestoft will be, by this time next year, one of the best connected towns in the entire country. Thank you very much, everyone. If I stop sharing.
Lovely, thank you. Thank you, Charles. I can't see any questions, Gabby, in the question and answer box at this time, unless anyone wants to type anything in now so we can read those questions out. If not, I think it looks like, Charles, you may have covered everything and no one had any questions for you at all, which is pretty impressive because even I understood most of that. So well done. There's obviously some stuff in the chat box, but that was obviously about people introducing themselves, etc. And the chat box, I think, Gabby, is closed at the moment, isn't it? Okay, so without any questions or answers on Charles's presentation, and thank you, Charles, you're most welcome to stay online. We're now going to move on to our next speaker. Next presenter is Richard Best, project manager at East Suffolk Council with the regeneration team. And he's going to be talking to us today about the seafront vision. Welcome, Richard. I can see your presentation and dog has arrived. So I'll hand over to you for the second presentation.
Thank you very much, Phil. Always a relief when the presentation pops up, so thank you, Gabby. And a difficult act to follow, Charles. Let's see if I can be as detailed, maybe, and the questions won't be necessary at the end, but more than happy to take them, obviously. So first of all, good afternoon, and thank you very much for this opportunity to present to you the Seafront Vision project that I'm currently developing for East Suffolk Council. For those of you that don't know me, I've worked for East Suffolk Council, formerly Waverley District Council, for the last 30 years, in which time I've held a number of management roles across different service areas. I'm currently one of the 4 project managers within the economic regeneration team, and this Seafront project is one of the 5 projects within the town's investment plan that we're currently working on at the moment. Thank you, Gabby. So in terms of background, and this will be familiar to many of you, Lowestoft's historic seafront, as you'll be aware, dates back to Morton Peto's time when he was working in Lowestoft to develop the railway line and station, the port, and some of the Victorian buildings that provide the backdrop to the seafront along Victoria Terrace. During the Victorian era, the Lowestoft seafront was a major destination place for visitors, tourists and holidaymakers, and Lowestoft was in its prime. Over the years and more recently, the seafront has been in decline due to lack of major investment, and it faces competition from other seaside towns. The challenge is to regenerate the seafront to its previous prestigious standing to once again be the destination place that it once was. Consultation with local communities, visitors and holidaymakers back in 2015 and since has concluded that the seafront is very tired and in need of regeneration. This prompted the seafront strategy to be drafted, which in turn informed the Seafront Vision, which was brought forward by Wayne Hemingway. Thank you, Gabby. This is the summary of the Seafront strategy objectives, which was aimed at encouraging greater footfall and spend at the seafront to ensure a sustainable tourism economy for Lowestoft and to build on the heritage and the culture of the seafront for this area of conservation. Those consulted wanted to see more accessible leisure facilities provided to improve the health and well-being of local communities, visitors and the tourists at the seafront. Improved accessibility and connectivity to the wider areas, including the Kirkley Village, Station Quarter and the town centre, was needed. Thanks, Gabby. So building on the project objectives, and a further aim of this project is to develop a sustainable all-year-round tourism economy. Now, I attended last week a national coastal conference event, and this was the key message that came over loud and clear, aimed at all of the seaside towns, that building on a 12-month of the year seaside economy is the way forward, and certainly the opportunity at the moment with the increase in people staying local and staying in this country for their holidays. This will be achieved in Lowestoft through an annual programme of events and festivals and wet weather venues and activities that will attract increased footfall for that 12 months of the year. Next slide, please, Gabby. So when we talk about the Seafront Footfall and the footprint that we're working to, although there's a number of various boundaries that take into effect the wider HAS boundary, this is the Seafront footprint that I'm working to for the project. It's stretching, as you can see, from CFAS 1.5 miles northwards up to and including the South Pier and part of the quay. So it's a long footprint. It takes in the 2 promenades, the upper and lower promenade, and all the various assets along its route. The recent master planning work that we had carried out and undertaken by John Sheaf Associates took in a wider area than this, but it certainly looked at each of those assets in turn and how they could be improved and developed to improve the overall seafront. So building on the project objectives and the aim to bring forward those improvements, we can see here that we've already got a number of projects already being improved and committed to at the moment. So we have there in the top left-hand corner, we have the East Point Pavilion, which is being brought forward and is in construction at the moment for development. On the right-hand side, we have the Boardwalk project, project I'm leading on at the moment to provide greater accessibility to the seafront. In the bottom left-hand corner, we have the 72 new chalets which are being provided on 2 levels. And then we also have some private assets coming forward as well with improvement. You'll be aware that the Clermont Pier is under new management, and the owners there are bringing forward some really good, exciting ideas and improvements. This slide provides a summary of the town's deal progress so far. Previous presentations to this group and the Place Board have explained the detail of the town's fund that's being offered by government. East Suffolk's Economic Regeneration team are currently developing the 5 projects selected by the Place Board and listed here, including the Seafront Vision project. The required business cases for each project are currently being developed by the team's project managers to meet the government's Green Book standard, which I could say is quite a challenge to us all at the moment. As I mentioned earlier, John Sheaf and Associates recently completed the master plan for the High Street Heritage Action Zone, which included this Seafront Vision footprint. The extensive consultation that was carried out by John and his team informed a long list of options and the high-level concept designs within the master plan. I've been working with the working group to refine the long list of options to a more deliverable short list of affordable actions within this business case. And I'll run through in a moment 2 of the key character areas that we're working on and we're proposing to bring forward. Next slide, please, Gabby. Although in need of regeneration, this seafront is still affectionately known as the jewel in Lowestoft's crown, with its golden beach, sea views, and historic setting. The seafront boasts a number of existing leisure opportunities for the more active visitors, including swimming, bodyboarding, kayaking, volleyball, and windsurfing. The First Light Festival in 2019 attracted 30,000 visitors, and the Banksy's Art Trail has also attracted thousands of culture and arts enthusiasts to the town. The seafront still enjoys a positive tourism economy, but this needs to be strengthened and improved if we are to increase the footfall and spend at the seafront and ensure Lowestoft can compete with other improving coastal towns. Next slide, please, Gary. This slide shows the business case and towns fund investment plan criteria that we're having to work toward and to meet. And this project has been considered against this criteria and how we can provide, for example, the greatest value for money, the greatest cost benefit, socio-economic benefits, impact, and affordability. Some aspects of the master plan we've put to one side at the moment, and they'll be delivered later within the 10-year programme due to the quite costly infrastructure costings required and the funding required. Some of the objectives will be delivered through the delivery of the East Point Pavilion regeneration and the new chalets, but we're also expecting that some of the new jobs and businesses to be created will be as a direct outcome of this public realm project, including significant contribution to that overall 300,000 metres squared of improved public realm that we're intending for the seafront. These measures were used to assess and refine the long list of outcomes detailed within the master plan, and I can now show you a couple of those shortlist areas. So the next 3 slides show the rural plain area that we've been looking at. You can see the area there around the East Point Pavilion and some of the high-level concept design for improved and additional biodiversity in the area, new planting and trees to come forward. It's also intended that the fountains, and certainly through the extensive consultation, many local people and visitors to the area are really keen to see the fountains up and running again. They're a big draw to the seafront, and that's something that we've taken on board. The next slide shows some visuals looking across to East Point Pavilion, the open softer space there, which allows connectivity for active travel, walking and cyclists to cut through to the seafront and the town centre. You can see in the distance there the fountains up and running again, and some of the quite funky contemporary public realm type seating, box seating, which has been proposed by John Sheaf and his colleagues. And here we can see the change in atmosphere and feel by introducing some lighting to help to draw in visitors for the nighttime economy. You can see the tired original fountains there on the right-hand photo, and you can see John's interpretation of what the fountain area could look like with some uplighting and a redesign with some steps, which is quite an exciting design that he's brought forward there. The next slides show the second area that we've considered, and this is the rural green area. And you'll see that we did go through a consideration that we could spread the investment for the length of the seafront, but it's 1.5 miles long, spread the jam thinly, as I put it at the presentation to the group, or we could concentrate on one area and provide greater impact and a greater draw for visitors and local communities. And we fell on the latter, that thinking that this area could be almost brought forward in its entirety for the public realm proposals, improvements and development. Sorry, Gabby, just on that previous slide. Yeah, thank you. Just south of the East Point Pavilion, it's proposed at this time that we would remove the Crazy Golf facility at the moment to be replaced further down the seafront, or maybe even possibly in the town centre at a later date. This area would be replaced with seating and benches again to encourage al fresco dining from East Point Pavilion, and also to provide, which we don't have at the moment, some really magnificent views across Rural Green and any events that might be taking place there. There's quite a strong theme here, as with all of the business cases, to bring forward improved biodiversity, to soften the areas, and obviously the environmental improvements that brings with it. And here's a virtual image showing, looking back to East Point Pavilion, what this indeed could look like, with some sails proposed here to help to protect the visitors from the elements of the weather. This can be obviously the heat of the sun, but also during the winter months. And you can see the bustling activities and improved events that could take place on the green. Something that John is very keen on, and he's informed us that this came through his consultation as well, is that communities are keen to have a place to dwell at the seafront where they can interconnect with each other. And John's thinking is that some of these curved benches that he's proposed along the promenades will enable just that, for communities and people to sit down and engage with each other and be far more connected rather than the straight seat benching that looks across to the sea views. And the next slide demonstrates that even further, and you can see this wavy benching proposal and improved biodiversity that softens the whole area. Thank you, Gabby. So in terms of the time frame, we're making some good progress and we're on schedule at the moment. The master plan was completed September this year by John and the associates. East Suffolk Council's Cabinet will consider and hopefully approve the town's investment plan business cases in January 2022. A summary of the 5 projects will be submitted to government in February 2022, with the town's funding awarded in the spring of next year. The project detail design work and commissioning for this particular project will take place next year as well, leading into 2023. And then we're hopeful that the first phase of public realm improvements could be anticipated for construction and installation year 23 to 24. That's the time frame that we're currently working to. As the master plan is working to a 10-year delivery plan, delivery of the second phase of public realm improvement is expected between 2024 and 2032, and would of course require further significant public and private sector inward investment. And of course, we're always working and looking at opportunities as they present themselves, and grasping those when they come to light. So finally, this is an incredibly exciting time for Lowestoft and all of those that are privileged to be working on these projects and working towards these exciting improvements for the town. The town investment plan builds on the positive infrastructure work that has already been delivered recently in Lowestoft or is currently in construction, with some of those projects listed here. There are also positive aspects to come out of the COVID pandemic, looking at some positives to come through the pandemic. And as we all hear in the press and the news, staycations, overnight stays and people holidaying now in this country is on the increase, and that's expected to be sustainable going forward for the next few years. And we have a real opportunity through these improvements at the seafront and the other improvements across Lowestoft to capture some of this market and to push and promote the tourism economy for Lowestoft and this area. So thank you very much for listening to the presentation, and I would be very pleased to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Very good. I think I saw a question come up there from Peter. I'm just going to try to get back to it to find that question. I think he's actually put it in the chat, but it says, we don't have anything for teenagers to do. A suggestion was that the Crazy Golf next to East Point Pavilion could be replaced with a skateboard facility. I don't know whether you'd heard that, Richard, but that was just a comment from Peter.
Yes, we have heard that that comment, and it's really helpful, and certainly having activities for younger people is always, a benefit, particularly at the seafront. It has been considered. I know John Sheaf and his colleagues did consider that, but with the overall consultation feedback that we had, and with the commitment we've already got to East Point Pavilion, it was felt that by generating the assets around there and the landscaping that's going to encourage wider communities and families, younger children and families to the area through the fountains, and the opportunity that we've got with the Royal Green, that overall it was felt this wasn't considered to be the best place and site to put skateboarding opportunities, but there is something to be considered for other areas along the seafront. And again, it's to stress that these are high level conceptual designs. As always, the devil's in the details. So when we get onto the more detailed planning and design work, preparing for planning applications, if that's what's necessary, there will be opportunities to consider sort of some further ideas going forward then. Something that you may have noted in the seafront strategy, increased leisure provision is something that we are really keen to bring forward, and to attract the Millennium Group from further afield, places such as Norwich, Cambridge, Ipswich, to come to the town for day trips and overnight stays. And we're feeling that building on that leisure offer is a real opportunity to do that. So people can enjoy the fantastic beaches during the day, they can enjoy some leisure opportunities, and then hopefully stay on for wining and dining and a choice of options and venues into the evening. So that's the kind of market and day we're looking to encourage. Any leisure activities, including skateboarding, would be a huge asset to the town, something for younger people, draw them into the town. It's just getting the right siting for that it works with all the other opportunities that we're working on.
Thank you, Richard. Peter, I hope that answers that. So just using my connectivity bit there as well, I suppose that we should be saying that hopefully the East Point Pavilion, when finished and done, will also have access to ultra-fast 5G broadband, because we certainly know that that's something that teenagers will want and demand. It's prompted some other questions, Richard, so you can't get away. I've got one from Maria that says, we have plenty of seating and lighting and landscaping, but these become redundant late at night. These late night activities are important. I agree, skateboard, roller rink, or an opportunity for young people to show off their skills would be good, or even a performance area. And then the other one from Dan is, are we considering power points for electric vehicles so that vehicles can be charged as they leisure? I'm sure that's something that's definitely going to have to feature in future planning around car parks, I guess. Richard, if you can comment on those. Richard looks like he might have frozen. Richard looks like he hasn't got 5G ultra fast broadband where he is. Richard looks like he's gone because those questions were too difficult.
Unfortunately, he has just disappeared. He
Yes.
will join back and we will pick up those questions at the end.
Yeah.
So
Just
don't
to
worry.
just to say in regard to EV charging points, because I know that that's a strategy that's been looked at by Suffolk County Council. We have fed into that at ESC. So I know that has been considered at key points across East Suffolk so that we have that connected ability for people with electric vehicles and users in tourism areas. I just thought
Yeah.
I'd just pop that in.
Thanks, Morag. That's excellent. Backing up, and it just goes to show you why we need 5G ultra broadband. He says moving on swiftly. So on that basis, we're going to move on now to Neil. Neil's joined us, Neil Rogers from Farron's, who are the builders of the Goldwing, and Neil's going to talk to us about that. If you've got any questions, please put them in the chat, and we will, in the question and answer, and we'll pick that up at the end. Over to you, Neil.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
I certainly can, and I would imagine everyone else can. Carry on.
You can, okay, that's good. I've discovered that my earphones don't work with Zoom, so I'm having to rely on the mic on my machine. So I'll share my screen if that's okay. I'll just start the presentation from the beginning. Let's hope this works.
It's come up on mine, Neil, so it's looking promising.
Yeah. Okay, so there we go. So I don't know how quick it'll move, but I'll do my best to make it work. Okay, so my name's Neil Rogers. I'm a project director for Farron's, building the Goldwing Bridge. We're also involved at Great Yarmouth doing the third crossing there in conjunction with BAM. We're in a joint venture there, but at Lowestoft we're on our own. So I'm just telling you a little bit about the project. Now, I'm guessing most of you will probably know a fair bit, so some of the early slides in my presentation might be a bit boring, so I'll skip through them fairly quick. As I guess you've probably seen similar presentations from Suffolk, but just to give you a little bit of high-level information, we're building an 8-span viaduct, but the key point is it's a bascule bridge, so it's a lifting bridge. Similar, obviously, in some ways, but much bigger than the existing. It's going to be a single carriage road with pedestrian facilities. But the main span, the interesting bit, is over Lake Lothing. And it's been designed, obviously, to enhance the aesthetics and the cultural nature of Lowestoft. So I guess you guys knew that, and you probably know where Lowestoft is. So you don't need that slide. We're adding to what is the existing crossings. This is Lake Lothing third crossing. That's the official title of the project. It's adopted the name Goldwing because of the competition that was won for naming the bridge, and that is now universally used by everyone. It's the Goldwing Bridge, but the official title of the scheme is Lake Lothing third crossing. So just to remind everyone where the existing ones are, down at Alton Broad, we've got a crossing there, which in my experience, I haven't seen it open, but because of at-level rail crossings at each end, that area is quite often very busy and traffic delays. The existing bascule bridge is obviously at the harbour end. So what we're adding is a third crossing pretty much in the middle. And the aim is obviously to stimulate regeneration and enhance Lowestoft. The objective is to open up for regeneration and provide capacity for planned growth. And also, quite importantly, to reduce the severance that exists between north and south, particularly during periods of high traffic. And I've experienced some of them in the summer. And those traffic concerns affect us quite significantly as the contractor, because we need to get from one side of the scheme to the other. Our scheme is actually divided up into 4 sections, really. We've got the South Quay, we've got the Marine Works, we've got the North Quay, and then we're severed again by the railway, and then we've got works north of the railway. So although it's a fairly compact job, it is a little bit of a struggle to get round. Further objectives is obviously reducing congestion, particularly in the town centre, encourage more people to walk and cycle, improve bus journeys and reduce accidents. This graphic just gives you a little bit of an understanding of the scale of the bridge. Obviously, it's not as big as any of those items, but it is still a pretty impressive bridge. The next graphic probably gives you a bit more understanding of the scale, because this is comparing the bascule section with Tower Bridge. And you can see that when our bridge is open, it's almost as tall as the cross member on Tower Bridge. So for those of you who are familiar, that is a pretty impressive structure, as will be the Goldwing. Goldwing Bridge is quite iconic. It's been designed that way to impress. There is no other bridge like that in the UK. There is only one other slightly similar bridge to that in Europe, in Italy, I believe, and that's a much smaller version. There is also a smaller version in New Zealand, which has a similar appearance, but pretty much this bridge is unique, and it's particularly unique in the UK, and it will attract a lot of interest, particularly as we get closer to opening it. Okay, hopefully you can see this, and you've probably seen it before, but we'll watch it again anyway because it's pretty good. This is a 3D simulation of the bridge when it's finished. So we're just going past Nexons now, over the South Quay, over the bridge, and as you see on the north side, we also cross the railway before we tie into Denmark Road. So I'm guessing most of you have probably seen that. It's certainly been in the public domain for several years. Okay. Just watch it as it comes back round.
Yes, but Neil, but we've probably never seen the traffic move so quick.
Yeah, hopefully we do get it to move that quick. I'm sure it will. Okay, a little bit about the programme. We were awarded the scheme. We tendered for the scheme last summer. Originally, it was to be a design and build scheme undertaken by BAM. The client, which is obviously Suffolk County Council, had some budget issues, and they weren't happy with the value of what they were getting with the original procurement structure. So they re-tendered. The design had been completed, so it's a build. Effectively, it's a build-only scheme for Farrens. That's not quite the true picture, because we do have some important design elements. For instance, we're designing all the electronics and mechanics, the hydraulics that operate the bridge, and all the safety systems that go with it. So the structure itself has been designed by Suffolk, or by Arup on behalf of Suffolk, but we will be designing the moving parts, if you like, what makes the bridge move. So just in terms of the programme, we tendered last summer. We were awarded the job at the beginning of December last year. That was, the delay between tender and award was due to obtaining the finance, obviously, and also getting through the planning, which was a development consent order process rather than a town and county planning, and that's quite a thorough and robust process that had to be followed. So we were awarded a start at the beginning of December, but we didn't get access to site until the spring. So April 21 was when we could actually get on site. So those first 4 months were spent doing a lot of the pre-construction activity, getting plans and consents in place. And obviously, because we were the new contractor, we were starting from a little bit of a cold start. So those 4 months were quite important to us to get all that work underway. So we've started in April. We've been on site now about 7 months, and a bit later on I'll take you through some of the progress we've made to date. We have started some of the marine works on site, which is the most visually sort of impressive work. but most of the work we're doing at the moment is still underground or below ground. That includes a lot of utility diversions, a lot of piling, and again, I'll go through some more details on that in a minute. One of the big milestones on the job will be putting the section of the approach viaduct that goes over the railway in place. That's due to happen early midsummer next year. That will be quite impressive. We have to build that section of the bridge offline and then drive it into position over a weekend, because we can only impact on the railway for the minimum time necessary. So that will be an impressive piece of work next year, and we'll probably be able to give some more details of that at a future presentation. Moving on from that, the main approach steel work will be going up from the middle of next year. The installation of the bascule itself is for round about Easter time 2023. That needs to be carefully planned. We effectively close the inner port for a period of 3 weeks, which will be hugely disruptive to associated British ports. So we've got to make sure we get everything in line so that we take the minimum time necessary. We certainly don't want to be holding up any of their business. So the opening the bridge mid to late 2023, those dates, obviously we keep them a little bit vague because it's a construction project and a lot can change, and this is quite a challenging project, so there's a lot of technical issues that we've got to find our way through. So key issues, obviously we've got to fabricate and install the bridge and get the bridge working. We've got to maintain the port operational at all times apart from that 3-week closure. We've got to maintain traffic flow around the city, around the town at all times, and we've also got to maintain around Network Rail and keep their lines open. Some of the stakeholders were, these are obviously some of the obvious ones. Suffolk County Council as the client, East Suffolk County Council as effectively the local council who we impact the residents of. There's also Associated British Ports, Network Rail, and also on there all the utility companies, and we can add to that City Fibre, who we're certainly working with at the moment to make sure they can get their infrastructure into ours whilst it's still being constructed. So just to highlight where some of those main stakeholders are, the blue box there shows the Network Rail land, so it's the track, but it's also some of the land adjacent to it on the south side. In that land on the south side, that's where we will be building the northernmost span before we slide it into place. The next two areas, the orange and the grey. The orange is land that's owned by Associated British Ports that we have now taken possession of, but running through that is commercial roads, so the main access to the port and many other contractors and businesses that operate in the port, so we have to keep that open at all times. So that's quite a big constraint on us. We have to be very careful how we plan our works to make sure we do that safely. And then the grey area is, the lake itself. We have permission to work in the lake, but at all times we're very much under the control of Associated British Ports. Every movement of every boat, every vessel, every activity we undertake on the lake has to be with their approval, and at all times we have to maintain the navigation channel between the piers that we're constructing. So that's quite an important feature. Just highlighted there is a UK Power Networks tunnel that runs under the lake. Probably none of you, or very few of you, would have known that existed. That is fundamental in that most of the power for Lowestoft is probably travelling through that tunnel, but also there's a lot of communications cables. I'd be interested to know where the City Fibre crossing points are, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're making use of that tunnel. So that tunnel is fundamental that we do not damage it. So we've had to plan our methodologies very carefully to make sure that we don't do any damage to that. I can tell you a little bit more about that shortly. And then on the South Quay, we've got a lot of businesses. The white area that isn't coloured in is our, basically it's our construction site, our compound site area. But all the orange is existing businesses. There's Suffolk County Council offices, East Suffolk Council offices. We've got Nexon forklifts, we've got Lings, we've got the NWES Business Centre and a few others that are all very important. We have to keep them open to business at all times. So that's a constraint to build our works. And the existing Riverside Road, which those businesses use, is becoming the south approach to the Goldwing Bridge. So it starts lifting up in level from the new roundabout that we're building. So that can no longer be used to access the business centre. So we're having to build an alternative road round the side to maintain access. That work's underway at the moment. And to facilitate that, we had to knock down some of the large sheds that were used by the timber business that was operating there several years ago. So this slide shows the marine works underway. Actually shows a bit more than that. So we're busily constructing Pier 3 on the South Quay. So we've done a big excavation there. We've done the piling, we've broken out the tops of the piles, and we're just now beginning to construct the base. We're constructing in this photograph the cofferdam for Pier 4. So a cofferdam is effectively a steel box built out of steel tubes and steel sheet piles. Inside that box, we then build the foundations that hold up the bridge. On Pier 5, that will be the next location where we build the cofferdam. But what you can see is a row of piles, steel tubes in the ground there or in the water. That is effectively a dolphin, which is a crash barrier, if you like, to stop any shipping hitting the bridge. So on both sides of both piers that are in the river, we have to put in these dolphins or crash barriers to protect the bridge. And then on Pier 6, that's in Associated British Ports land. We're busy there building a pier base as well. So progress to date then, the first 6 months. I'll start on the south side. We've been undertaking a lot of utility diversions. We've got all the usual. We've got Anglian Water, Essex and Suffolk Water. So Anglian's the sewers, Essex and Suffolk the fresh water. We've got BT, Virgin. We've now got City Fibre. We've got Cadent Gas. We've got UK Power Networks, both small power and high voltage. That's 11 kV and 33 kV cables. So all of those are existing in the existing roads. And before we can start to build the new structure, we have to divert them out of the way. And so we're in the process of doing that and diverting them around the new roads that we're building. So utility works probably about, I'd guess, 70% complete now. We've undertaken demolition of the sheds on the South Quay. We've just about finished building Ling's retaining wall in front of the garage. And we're now going to be progressing to build their new entrance. We've done some accommodation works around the NWES Centre just to facilitate their change into their parking. We've broken out all the existing concrete slabs on both the South Quay and the North Quay. And then what we've had to do, excuse me, is do UXO surveys. So Lowestoft, as with many other towns, and particularly seaside towns, was subjected to bombing in both World War I and World War II. And before we can do any deep construction work, which is basically piling, we have to demonstrate that it's safe to do so. So the only way we can do that is to effectively drill holes into the ground and lower sensitive detectors, that effectively metal detectors, to detect if there's any suspicious metal devices in the way of our works. And if there is, we then have to undertake a controlled dig and get the military in to help defuse them. We've undertaken all that work, including work in the lake and we didn't find anything, luckily enough, but it's a precaution that we have to take. So we've done that works. We've undertaken we've commenced the piling. I'm going to tell you a bit more about different piling in a minute. We've commenced work on the marine works. So pretty much over the full site, we are busy. And if you look, the marine works, the actual bascule bridge itself, which gives the scheme its name, that is probably only really 20% of the job. It's a much bigger job than that. It's a mixture of road works, heavy civil engineering, utility diversions. We've got some building work to do because we've got a control tower to build. And there's obviously a lot of mechanical and electrical works in there as well. So it's a very interesting scheme. Okay, this is a 3D graphic that shows the structural elements of the job. So what you can't see is the ground, the roads, the river, the harbour, the railway even. This is just all the structural things that we have to build. So this is just to really give you an idea of the piling that we've got on the scheme. On all the land, we've got what we call continuous flight auger piles. So these are installed by a giant drilling rig with effectively a giant corkscrew type device on the end of it. And that drills down into the ground. And then when it extracts the auger, it pumps concrete into the ground. So the ground isn't left unsupported. If you drilled a hole unsupported 28 meters deep, the sides will probably collapse in, particularly in the ground we've got, which is very wet, sandy gravels below the made ground. That would just collapse. So what you do is you drill in an auger, and then as you extract the auger, you pump in concrete, and then at the end of that, you sink in a reinforcement cage. And we've got 170 of those piles to install up to 28 meters deep, 1.2 diameter. So they are, piles that are pushing the limits of that sort of technology. There's not really anything bigger than that in the UK for that type of equipment. On top of that, we've got a lot of steel tube piles that we've installed. These are for the dolphins and for the cofferdams. Then inside those, we've got rotary bore piles. So we vibrate 1200 millimeter diameter or 1.2 millimeter diameter tubes into the river. We then build some temporary works on top of that to hold a piling rig, and then we pile through those tubes down to a depth of 65 meters. So again, that is quite a considerable depth, but that's how deep we need to go to find the firm, solid ground to put the bridge foundations in. And for this type of bridge, that is particularly important because it's a bascule bridge. So if you look at the section of bridge that lifts and lowers, that's designed to operate 10 or 20 times a day. That exerts significant loading onto the piers and the abutments, particularly onto Pier 4, which is the big pier in the river. So those piles have got to resist that lifting and lowering over 120 years of design life. So the piling is particularly tough on this job. On the north side, on the north of the railway line, we've also got what we call deep soil mixing, which is a ground improvement technique. We drill into the ground, but then instead of removing the soil and replacing it with concrete, what we do is we just mix cement with the existing ground. So it's not as tough and robust as a concrete pile, but what it does do is it stiffens up the soil and stops settlement. So without doing any treatment, we would find that approach ramp on the north side would probably settle, a couple of 100 millimeters, which would be totally unacceptable, particularly as you're driving onto a solid bridge, which isn't going to settle at all. So you have to do ground improvements to stop that happening. So we've got deep soil mixing to happen there. So there's quite a lot of different piling techniques on the job. So just a quick photograph there. So this is a photograph of the continuous flight auger piling. We've completed the first phase of that now. We've got 2 more bases to build on the job, but we can't do those until all the utilities are diverted, which will be springtime next year. So we've we've completed the work available to us at the moment. So their piles up to 28 metres deep. So three loads of concrete to fill each pile, or probably more like four loads. Okay. Once those piles are in the ground, we break down the tops of them, dig down to the base level, and then we pour in a blinding layer of concrete, which is what we're doing there. So the blinding layer isn't particularly structural. It just levels off the ground and gives us a nice, clean, firm platform for us to build the reinforced concrete base. So this is Pier 3. This is the biggest base on the scheme. We're placing the blinding concrete. This was a couple of weeks ago. We've now started placing the reinforcement. So that base is going to be 2 metres thick with massive reinforced steel cages in it. And that will take 1,200 cubic metres of concrete. And that is a significant challenge to us, because concrete batching in this part of the world, there's only fairly limited resources available. And we will be monopolising those resources for a couple of days on a base pour that size. So we will be denying probably anyone else any concrete for a couple of days. We do apologise for that. Okay, moving on. This is a drawing that shows you a little bit more about the actual approach steelwork for the structure. So you can see at the bottom of this section for Pier 3, you can see the piles at the bottom. We've then got a concrete base. We've then got a pier that we build out of concrete that's 5-6 meters tall, depending on where it is. And then on top of that, we sit some giant steel work. And then on top of that, we cast a concrete base, a concrete bridge deck. So they're the stages we need to go through. At the moment, we're still in the ground, we're still piling, we're just starting to build the base, but there's a lot more work to do. But in the next few months, it will start to get more visual. This is just another graphic of showing the bridge when it's finished. So that's the control tower. So that's a 7-story control building. That's part of the package we've got to build where the people will operate the bridge from. You can see there the bridge is in the lifted position. The way this bridge works is it hasn't got pivots as such. What it does is it rotates around the curved sections of the J-beams. So the J-beams are the lighter coloured giant bent beams that support the bridge, and it rotates around them. So if I go on to, actually there's another photo later on that will show that in a little bit more detail. But this shows the bridge when it's in its open position. Okay. Just going to tell you a little bit about some of the works we've done already. So for the marine works, first thing we had to do was do a lot more ground investigation. So we had ground investigation teams and tripods and rigs on the barge. We obviously have to float out and do work on the river. We've also done some probing to assess how soft the ground is, and the reason we have to do that is, as well as the permanent works which have already been designed, we have to design temporary works that are in place while we're doing construction. That's our responsibility to design, and we have to have a very good understanding what the ground conditions are to do that. So we've undertaken some extra ground investigation works. This was right at the beginning of the job, in the first couple of months of the job. And this diagram just gives a rough indication of the sort of ground we've got. This only shows it down to -20. Our piles are going down to -60 or in that region. So the line, the oscillating line at the top just shows the high and low tides. The tidal range in Lowestoft is only about 1.5 meters, so it's fairly small. So there's not too much tidal range to worry about. But below the water, we've got very soft, silty clays, and then we get into gravels. And then once we're through the gravels, we get into a much firmer clay. And it's the firmer clay where the foundations have to sit, but we have to get through the silt and the sand before we can get the piles into the firmer material below. So this is just a couple of photographs. This is a view from high up on one of our cranes, just showing a lot of the steel work that we've got laid out. You can see our orange cabins there, which are on the South Quay. The heavy steelwork tubes we're unloading there with a 1,000-ton crane. We had to bring them in by ship. They're too big to bring in by road. This just shows some of the equipment we used for installing the bigger tubes in the river. So I mentioned earlier on the UKPN tunnel, we had to install the piles that are close to that very carefully. We couldn't just vibrate or bang them into the ground. We had to come up with a different technique. That technique required a giant piling rig that could gently screw the piles into the ground rather than hammer them. To do that, we had to sit it on a jack-up barge, and we had to be quite careful where we position that barge. So this next slide just shows the jack-up barge has to be further away from the UK tunnel, because if one of those giant legs was sitting on the tunnel, it would probably crush the tunnel and the tunnel would flood, and we would probably have 2 or 3 years of delay and tens of £1 million worth of costs. So we've had to come up with techniques and arrange our equipment carefully that doesn't happen. So we can have a floating crane barge over the top of the tunnel, but we can't have a jack-up barge with the loads running through the legs. This next slide just shows some of the temporary works that we're putting in place. We effectively have to build a metal cage that we can then slide in and bang in the permanent works. So this, what you can see here is the barge, and you can see a mixture of steel tubes and steel beams, most of which is temporary works that will be taken away once we've finished installing the permanent works. You can just see underneath the steel tubes that are the permanent works. And this photo shows that in a bit more detail. So most of that steel work is temporary. The permanent stuff will only just be above the water. Okay, it's just another quick bit of video. I think I've got another 5 minutes, if that's okay, so I'll keep going. This just shows the bridge when it's currently open to traffic or road traffic, and this is just showing it as it starts to lift. Just let this run for a few more seconds. So you can see here when the bridge begins to lift, it's actually rotating about those curved beams, which is a totally innovative design, as I mentioned earlier. Okay, I'll skip on because I've got a few more slides to go. There's some artistic impressions just showing what it'll look like when it's closed, when it's open. That'll be the view from the road as you're driving across. This drawing actually shows the giant hydraulic rams that are used to lift the bridge. And you can see there the curved nature of the beams, and as you pump up those hydraulic rams, the bridge rotates around those curves. This is another drawing that shows how that operates. Just a quick couple of sketches that show how we will bring that part of the bridge in. Steelwork is being fabricated over in Holland and Belgium. We couldn't find anyone in the UK who had the facilities to build, particularly the bascule section, and get it into the water. The bridge has to be installed from the water. So these pictures show the sequence. So that in the top left-hand corner, we're bringing the new bridge in through the existing bascule bridge. So you can see it on the barge, it just fits through that gap. But on the barge there, the bridge is running front to back. Whereas if you look at the picture below, we've now rotated that round and it's running across the barge. And we've also lifted it up in the air. We couldn't transport it across the channel in that raised position and rotate it around that. It'd be too unstable. So we have to bring it across as it is and then adjust it. We then have to float that into position. This is when all the rest of the bridge is built, and use a mixture of the tides and hydraulics to lower the Bascule Bridge into position. When it's in position, we can then connect all the hydraulics and get the mechanical engineering issues working. And the last thing we have to do, and the bottom right-hand picture is showing us pumping in concrete into those vertical sections of the Bascule Bridge, and that is counterweight. Without that concrete, the rams wouldn't be able to lift the bridge. So we've got to fill those hollow beams with concrete, and it can't be any concrete. It has to be particularly dense concrete. It has to be twice the density of normal concrete. So effectively, it's concrete made out of iron ore. We're not the only people to use that. It's quite often used as ballast in ships, but it's not often used in bridges. That's just a view of the Bascule section. I think my time's up. Just a quick comment on some of the challenges we're having to deal with. Obviously, as along with every other business and enterprise, we've got to deal with COVID and the implications of Brexit. We've had to discharge a lot of planning conditions. So, for instance, we've had to submit Section 61s to East Suffolk, which dictate how much noise we can make. We've had to get consents from the Environment Agency on extraction and discharge of water. We've had to get marine licenses from the Marine Management Organisation. So there's a lot of consents that are needed for a major scheme like this, which we've had to work on. I've mentioned that the East Dolphins and the work close to the UKPN tunnel. We've got the interfaces with Network Rail, ABP, the businesses, managing all the utilities on the job, with all the different complexities of those, ground conditions, and the amount of temporary works that we've had to design. So that's it. I think my time's up. It's a bit of a rush job. I'll be happy to either answer questions or maybe at a future session give you more detail about certain elements of the job.
Neil, thank you. I mean, it's no rush job, even though you said you rushed through that. It's no rush job, and I think what it does do, it demonstrates just how complicated and how massive a project this is. People once said to us, we'd never have dolphins in our harbour. Well, how wrong they were, hey? And I like the idea that they're much better than a crash barrier. A dolphin's a much nicer term. But thank you, Neil. That was really informative, and I think it really has given certainly anyone who doesn't know exactly what has got to be done that real insight into just how complicated this is. So I think question-wise, we've got a couple here. Dan's asked one here, says the cost of materials have been rising these last year. Do you expect the costs to further increase for the building of the bridge, or has that already been considered? First of all,
okay, well, just answer that. I mean, it's anybody's guess. Is the honest answer. We hope they've peaked. We've had to make some difficult decisions. We've bought certain things early because we needed to. We're delaying buying certain things, hoping that the price might come down. But it is a big uncertainty. That's probably the same for many other businesses.
Okay, thanks. And anyone who's thinking about having any concrete needs to know when you're going to nick it all. And then the other one from Maria was that she says, thank you, Neil. Really enjoyed your presentation on the Goldwing. I worked on some projects years ago. My daughter's watching with me. It looks very elegant despite the complex infrastructure. And it was just really a thank you for making it that interesting, which you definitely did do. I think those are the ones from there. I don't think there's any other questions, Gabby, unless I'm...
There is one that's just popped into the chat box, which says, with the repairs to the current bridge and closures, is the new bridge much easier to maintain, particularly with the lifting device?
Well, it should be. Part of our contract says that it has to be, and there's reliability clauses, and we've got heavy penalties if it isn't. So it's certainly being designed to be robust and reliable. obviously the existing bridge is much older. This is being a nice new shiny one, so this should work. But it's designed for 120 years with maintenance, but it's designed for the long term. One thing I didn't mention, and I'll just quickly mention, I didn't talk about all the work we're doing to try and share the opportunities with the local businesses. I won't go into details, but we are trying to do a lot to share the work with local businesses and also opportunities for employment. And amongst our staff, we've got over 40 staff, about 43 staff on the job, and 20 of those are local people within 30 miles, locally employed people. And that's people in the office, on site. There'll be hopefully a lot more opportunities as well. So we're doing what we can.
And I will say, for anyone who doesn't know, Neil, that the social responsibility that Farron's are doing locally with helping community groups and other things is also noted, and it's really good. And that whole skills mix and helping the college and all those things that go with this are important. I know you haven't touched on that today, but that's really good to see that. So thank you. Okay, okay, thanks. Richard Best, I think you've rejoined us. There was a couple of questions that we had from your period. One from Janet Craig, which said a lot of visitors to the town aren't aware there's a sandy beach with lifeguards further south, obviously beyond the Claremont. Are there plans to publicise this better?
Thank you, Phil. Yeah, and sorry, apologies for dropping out. We had a very unexpected power cut, but we're back on power now. Yeah, answer to that, yes, I think we're mindful with all of these projects and opportunities coming forward for the Seafront. We need to be organising a really coordinated marketing and promotion campaign when the projects are all coming up for implementation. So a number of those are March next year. They're coming at a bit of a canter. So we will be putting publications forward. And yes, if there's any tips such as that, where there needs to be better promotion, we can perhaps include all of that to make sure that we make it a really comprehensive piece of work. So yeah, thank you very much, Dan. I'll make a note.
Thank you. And just a couple of more picking up now. There was one here from one of our anonymous attenders. It's also a fantastic offer to young people through work experience and direct employment. We here at Inspire Suffolk have first-hand accounts of local young people taking advantage of this, and I think that's directed in relation to the work that Farron's have been doing with young people and work experience. So that's great. And one from Sue Meeking, just it will use a lot of power. Are any of the structured surfaces, the wings or control tower, able to be used solar energy generation? So then just thinking about the actual power that bridge is going to use, is solar energy going to be part of it? I don't know whether you could even answer that one, Neil, but that's one for you on sport.
Yeah, well, I mean, we haven't got any solar power as part of the scheme, but hopefully we'll all be using green energy very shortly.
Yeah, all generated off the East Suffolk coast, that's what we should say. Okay, Neil, thank you. Richard, thank you for coming back. We did laugh about you needing 5G broadband while you're away. And just keeping my theme of connectivity, Neil mentioned the point, part of the whole objective is to connect the north and south of Lowestoft. And bearing in mind the history's gone back to the Middle Ages of north and south Lowestoft being separate, that it'll be a fantastic opportunity, Neil, if you can actually connect north and south and they could all live happily ever after. But that is the plan. So moving on now to our fourth and final contestant for this, the Lowestoft Town Wi-Fi project. Maureen Mckinnis from East Suffolk is going to talk us through that one. So Maureen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Phil. Without any further ado, I will share my screen. I've got a presentation ready, though I would say it's probably not quite as snazzy as I hoped. I did have another one ready on a better platform, but it failed the last time I did a couple of Zoom calls. So apologies, it's just a very simple set of slides, but I just wanted to get some key messages about this project, which is moving into delivery at this stage. I will hope to come back to the investors meeting at some point, perhaps with my provider in place, where we can do some live demos and give it even more sort of experience about the project. So my name's Maureen Mckinnis. I am a project manager for this project, but my sort of normative role at East Suffolk is the business and enterprise lead. And I've been working on this project over the last 2 years, including looking for funding and developing it up. We're now moving, as I said, into pre-delivery, so it's a great opportunity to reach out and start talking about it in a wider space. I'm just going to start the slideshow, excuse me. Hold on. Can you all see that okay?
It's okay, but if you go into slideshow and from the beginning.
Yeah, I know, I'm just trying to get to my...
Your mouse doesn't seem to want to move, does it?
No.
It should be the slideshow one from beginning should make it go to full screen then.
Yeah, let me just try again. Sorry about this, everyone. Yeah, it won't let me go there. No, hold on, let me just see if I can.
If you hit F5 on your keyboard, it'll make you.
Sorry, I should. There we go. Here we go.
Excellent.
Thank you, everyone. So, yeah, I just wanted to give you an overview of Lowestoft town Wi-Fi and just give an indication of some of the remits of the project and the benefits for the town. So East Suffolk Council identified funding to install technology and develop data analysis in up to 12 East Suffolk town centres, including Lowestoft. And this is going to be combined with other programs to support businesses with digital growth and to support towns with digital promotion and placemaking. We have received funding from both the New Anglia LEP as part of the Innovative Projects Fund, and we also received funding for Lowestoft and Felixstowe from the Getting Building Fund in order to get the infrastructure in place to a really good offer in both of those places. So what is the technology that we want to install in our town centres? Well, first of all, we want to install free-to-use public Wi-Fi in the public realm. So that means connecting up our town centres with a free-to-use public Wi-Fi service. At the same time, we're also going to be installing digital footfall counters, which will allow us to understand dwell time and habituation of our town centres a lot better. And both of these data feeds from these different technologies will be connected to a town dashboard, which will allow us to look at the data and seek interpretation. As part of the package that we get, we also have a marketing platform that comes with the Wi-Fi, and this allows us to our towns to develop newsletters, e-shots on town and place promotion, and we can use it to promote one area town to another as well, which will really allow for some more dynamic town marketing across the board. So our provider for the technology is Elephant Wi-Fi, a really trusted provider who's got an excellent track record in delivering similar systems in towns across the UK. They've regularly worked with bids, and we are really delighted that we are moving forward with this project. It's quite pioneering to do this many towns at once in a 2-year window across East Suffolk, and it's part of a wider understanding within East Suffolk Economic Development Team that data is going to be essential. Data about understanding our towns is going to be essential. We've noticed that even with funding bids and the way we're supporting towns and town centres, the more information we have about users, habituation and dwell time, the better. And this gives us really accurate information. So I just wanted to run through some initial benefits for Lowestoft, and obviously I do want to make it clear that I'm happy to answer questions at the end as well. So of course we've got increased connectivity. Now a lot of people think with the advent of 4G and people having lots of data on their mobile phones that why do we need free to use public Wi-Fi? And I do understand that. I think my point would be that first of all that not everyone has access to data sort of credits on their mobile phone. This really does breach a bit of the sort of digital poverty divide in town centres, which I think is really positive for a lot of our town centres. And actually in parts of Lowestoft, as in parts of many of our market towns, 4G is really quite hard. We were just my colleagues were just in Felixstowe recently for the major event over the weekend to do with bikes. And basically they noticed that they just couldn't log on. They couldn't actually get access to the internet, which would have been useful for them to post pictures at that time. So we do think that having access to Wi-Fi will increase connectivity. But the main thing is as well is that those Wi-Fi users can directly connect to town information, in this case perhaps in the Discover Lowestoft website, which is run by the BID. And it means that they can therefore navigate greater use of information around opportunities in the town, tourism features and attractions, and sign up for more information about what's coming up in terms of events and news for Lowestoft. We have done a lot of work with towns and town centres as part of ED work, and we do notice that town marketing is something that needs extra tooling across the East Suffolk region, and this is really going to help. In addition, we can examine dwell time and some of the journey pattern of pedestrians, and not just simple kind of information to do with the number of visitors, which you often get through simple footfall data, but also really understanding the permeability of one area of town to another. So in Lowestoft, that's going to be really interesting, especially that really significant questions like the permeability of the seafront to other parts of town. It means that we can understand how long people are spending in Lowestoft and whether they do move around one area to another, whether they do know about one place from another. And I think for so much of the regen and connected work that's happening in Lowestoft, this will really add another benefit, another layer where we've got the data and we've got the promotion as well. So understanding that town centre and how it's being used, we can also examine the percentage of out-of-town visitors, because that is through data that's collected through the Wi-Fi sign-in. Through using the dashboard, we can actually understand the impact of local events and attractions. And again, those local events and attractions are often kind of key events that perhaps need extra funding or might need evidence of usage, or might need more information about how many people actually use them. We're going to actually have quite a lot of intelligent data on major events such as First Light Festival within 2 years in Lowestoft, and I'm really excited about how we're going to use that. And obviously we can also understand seasonal variations and town visitor habituations, and obviously that really ties in to a lot of what Richard was saying about, we're very aware that towns like Lowestoft need to understand their evening economy better, but they also need to understand how they're being used in outer season times. And what are those target times? When do you have your peak times? What areas of times are too quiet, and how can we help local people create more events to create more stimulus? We just got the data behind this now. So the town technology rollout, just to give you an overview here, just through information, obviously the technology itself is really, really small, unintrusive technology. We're not digging up roads. We're using existing technologies within the public realm. That will be adding devices to lampposts, for example, occasionally buildings, but mainly lampposts. And that will give us this kind of mesh approach to having Wi-Fi zones across the town, and also key sort of geosense nodes to pick up a footfall at different kind of gateway points across the town. We obviously have the data feeds that I mentioned, and they all both connect to the dashboard, and we also have that marketing platform that I mentioned. And I'm just going to go into a few more details as I progress through the slides. So I wanted to give you some indication of coverage in this meeting. I was really, really keen to make sure that Lowestoft and Felixstowe had a really good level of coverage. You've got those issues to do with seafront and town centre permeability. we've got a lot of energy and commitment going into the town centre, and there's a new vision of the town centre and at Lowestoft as place. So I thought that we couldn't just have one small zone around the key high street area, though we are putting it in there. So that's one zone. We've also got London Road North that we've costed up as well, and we want to put it in there. We've also got London Road South, and you notice that goes all the way up to near the beach huts. And then we've also got the seafront as well. And I requested that went all the way up to Kensington Gardens, because I was conscious of that as an event growing space, not just for First Light, but other sort of potential use of culture across the seafront itself. So I think those combined zones will operate as a whole connected zone. You don't sort of dip in and out of the other, they all connect up, but it means you've got this quite interesting large scale zone across a one single town on the seafront, which I'm really excited about. I think it's going to be a really good offer for Lowestoft. There are some quite sophisticated marketing techniques that you can do with the marketing platform, where you kind of can do nudge e-shots from one zone to another. So that means that, you know, some of those questions earlier about like how we market those the seafront to town visitors, this could be a way of doing that with the right resources in the town at the time. Okay, so I just wanted to go into a little bit more about the dashboards and what they're going to give us. Obviously, we can get some information about dwell time, but what we have also found in other towns, or the providers found in other towns, and even in our little pilot in Framlingham, is that there was also quite a lot of myth debunking about assumptions that are often made in towns, that, you know, a lot of people assume that there is one problem in one area and not the other, and actually we can get really interesting information that either evidences that, and therefore we can create the better local support, or it can debunk it as well. So it means that we can actually say, well, that might not be where we should put our best support, it should be perhaps in these areas instead, and that's going to be quite interesting. We're going to examine journeys, so pedestrian journeys and common routes, and I don't mean that as by the individual, I mean that as commonalities of trend, and that can actually lead to some quite interesting uses where we can change signage, for example, or again change kind of information points, understanding where people congregate and how long for, and where they're more likely to go next. And I think that can be quite useful with how we adapt the public realm going forward. With the Wi-Fi analytics, we get a lot of information about the user time that they spend on it, but also, you know, we get this opportunity for sign-ups and marketing impact. So we'll understand by how much they're using that sort of Wi-Fi and marketing sign-ups, how interested they are, and how much news and events they want to have. With the dashboard itself, it means that we can calendarize certain key events for Lowestoft and make sure that we are, you know, looking at their impact when it comes to footfall, the number of out-of-town visitors, the impact of weather and time of day, of the week, and so on. In other towns, they've used this kind of data in a really fascinating way. For example, you can perhaps even consider changes in opening times if you're a business, or it could be that you get more understanding of your average town centre user, like their age or their or how long they're staying for, at what time, and that could mean that you promote your business or certain voucher schemes at a key certain time. And in certain market towns, they have actually said to businesses, look, you know, you're often closing on a Monday, that's one of our busiest days, why don't you consider moving and adjusting that? And all of that is really beneficial to supporting our high street, which we know does require a lot of support at the moment. In regards to the marketing platform, obviously we get information from that as well. People can sign up for newsletters, offers and promotions, and it all connects back to the town website as well. So there is a kind of perfect circle of marketing. So that's just a typical example of a login page. So when people come into town, there will be an element of signage in the public realm space, but they'll also be able to connect into the Wi-Fi quite easily. There's not too many questions. We are not obviously we're a local council. We don't want to over collect data on individuals. So it's very much about like opting in. It's all consent based, it's all permissions based, and it's quite an easy and straightforward way of connecting into Wi-Fi. That's an example of a Wi-Fi marketing example, which I just sort of knocked up actually. So it's not the best one you can do, but it means that you can see an indication of the kind of newsletters that can be sent out, and that comes on the Send in Blue platform that comes with our provider. It operates a bit like many businesses will use newsletter formations like MailChimp and Campaign Manager and stuff. It's that kind of thing where you can really send newsletters, but also drill down and look at the success of their impact as well. So this is just a screenshot of the data dashboard that we can get. It's not dynamic. I will come back and do a sort of full demo with my provider when we're live in Lowestoft. I think that would probably be more sensible when we've actually got live in Lowestoft dashboard. But we will be able to get quite a lot of information from this. There is also the ability to print certain and export certain reports within certain time zones, so you can really kind of get seasonal and weekly reports. There's a lot of automation on this, so this can go directly to local business groups, local stakeholders, so that we can get all of this data information being shared effectively across different resources. This is a kind of example of some of the journey visitors, so you can really kind of see the percentages of people doing different routes across town. As you can see, it's anonymized, there's no kind of individual data, but it gives us a real understanding of both dwell time and also pedestrian trends, whilst obviously protecting individual privacy. So I just wanted to go into how this kind of work fits in with wider economic development programming and some of the extension projects that are being considered that I've incorporated to this program of work, or that are actually now become even more pertinent now that we're doing this level of digital support in towns. As part of the economic development team, we have done quite a lot of support work with towns across East Suffolk, first of all with People and Places, and within People and Places work, which was a programme of activity supporting market towns in East Suffolk. We are now working with town groups to ensure that linking up with Wi-Fi programs becomes part of that action planning, so that we can get some sort of symbiotic projects happening at local level as well, to ensure that town marketing and town marketing resource is being considered now that we're getting this technology in place as well, which will be an embedded tool. We've also done quite a lot of kind of looking at our town's digital assets, and that led to quite a lot of town website audits happening across the last year in readiness for them being used as a potential Wi-Fi platform. And we've also looked at and understood more about the digital skills required in towns in order to prepare themselves for effective digital marketing. There's going to be more onboarded support that comes in place. And it is a program that will come with its own marketing and campaigning that we will want to be sharing with our partners, both town councils and bids and business groups in local areas, including Lowestoft. So there's going to be plenty of time for connected messaging and launch events and so on. In terms of our work with councils, bids and town groups, I would call it close working relationships, especially with this project. We very much want it to be like the town's Wi-Fi, you know, and the town's opportunity to use it well for local marketing and supporting pride of place. So we're really ensuring that those meetings and those opportunities grow as the project moves into launch. And obviously we're supporting the bid with direct business support and marketing strategies. So in terms of the other key extension projects that are coming on board, the first one is a program that I'm sort of internally calling the Digital Springboard. That's something that we got some of our funding support for actually as part of the innovative projects fund. And that was a recognition that we can't just put in infrastructure and expect a digital shift. We need to support businesses, particularly in town centres, to go on a bit of a digital growth journey to make best use the Wi-Fi and promotion, but also have those digital skills to make sure that their business is online, that they can access a wider market, that they are looking at omni-channel approaches, even in a small business, because it's even relevant for that now. So with that, I'm just about to procure a large-scale business support program that will happen over 2 years, that aims to take it a minimum of 200 businesses on that journey. And there will also be support for a particular level of support for town centre businesses. And also I really want to be supporting key place assets in an area. So for example, if there's little local museums, cinemas, so on, places where that actually contribute to the sort of digital assets of a town, then they should also get access to that support. And we did do some early work in Lowestoft, and that was part of a pilot program that I did earlier this year. It's actually really successful. We got a number of small businesses in both the Northern Has area and wider supported on that pilot program, and I'm really excited that we can support them further with this 2-year program going forward. The other kind of areas of extension projects we're looking at as part of ED work, economic development work, is firstly digital high street offers. We're looking at a potential digital delivery service for East Suffolk, which will allow small high street businesses to promote their products and offer delivery, which could be really exciting. Let's kind of watch this space. We're still navigating that one. And also we have started to work on a digital town trails program, which again will be East Suffolk wide, but I am really conscious of all the cultural activity that's happening in Lowestoft, how it connects with town centre activity as well, whether that's an arts trail, incorporating the Banksies and the other amazing community artwork in Lowestoft, but also connecting in with businesses and opportunities to have fun and seek leisure within Lowestoft. So all of that I feel is a really nice digital offer to support the town with promotion, but also support the town with digital growth. So those all those programs kind of operate in a sort of quite a synergized way. Okay, so I just wanted to go through what I saw some of this business support program looking like. I'm conscious that there could be businesses on board and here tonight. If you are interested and you want to get in touch with me and join a wait list of businesses that want to hear more, do get in touch. I'm going to share my email at the end of the slideshow, and I'm always happy to communicate the business support in general. So what we anticipate is that small and medium-sized businesses will access the program. They will access through various different means, both web means and also local events and marketing. We're going to offer businesses website audits and digital skills audits so that they really understand their needs in a sort of modern digital world. And I do believe that small businesses have a lot to contribute here. I think indies can really change their game. And the more indies that we support at local level, the more small businesses we are encouraging them to feel part of that place. But there is a part of place which is also digital, and it's digital real estate as well as actual real estate. And if we can create a clamour around small businesses on say Lowestoft High Street and Lowestoft Seafront, and the ability to spread their messages online, the more we improve Lowestoft real estate full stop online. And I think that's a really interesting thing. We've got to take businesses on this journey. So we're also going to have potential access for a grant for digital improvements for certain businesses on the high street. And obviously, we also are going to be communicating that dashboard data to businesses, making sure that they understand what's happening in terms of their town centre, but also the ability to perhaps offer direct promotion of their business, any events and promotions that they want to push out on the public Wi-Fi newsletter portal. Okay, next slide. So I'm just going to go over the core benefits. I mentioned that whole thing of digital placemaking, and I hope I've communicated that well, where you're really investing not just in infrastructure, but support activities and better promotion of a place overall. We're also going to, the insights that we're going to get from the dashboards and from the devices that we're installing will allow us to better improve the support that we give to towns when it comes to promotion and marketing, and as well as business support. It will increase our understanding of Lowestoft as a tourism town centre and a tourism destination, but also allow us to how to increase that promotion, increase that opportunity for Lowestoft as a whole. We're going to support businesses and increase their access, so improve their digital visibility. And we're going to synergize other programs, including the delivery service, digital high street solutions, and digital trail experiences. Okay, so obviously if there's any questions today, more than happy to answer them. We've got a big project team with this project because there's different elements. I'm going to be mainly delivering on the digital Springboard, but I will be very much, a point of contact as well. But there is another colleague, Kelly Wigley, who's going to be overseeing a lot of the program management as well. If you've got, if you're a business, you want to get in touch about how you can participate in the program, please do contact me. Or if you have any questions now, then I'm more than happy to answer them. Many thanks.
Morag, thank you very much. You'll be pleased to know you've got questions. The first two are from Dan Portress.
Okay.
He wants to know what programs will there be to limit scammers pretending to be the town's Wi-Fi? So how will we stop other people claiming they are the town's Wi-Fi? And his second one is that if customers turn off the GPS tracking, will that affect your ability to track footfall?
So with the first question, obviously when we procured this, we went for really, really robust data security procurement, and that particular risk that you've mentioned has never happened to our provider. There's always a risk of not hacking, I would say, but kind of public Wi-Fi vulnerability. And I don't mean that with the platform. I don't think that's going to be an issue. I don't see why a scammer would do that. I don't think it's possible for them to suddenly connect their website in. But it's more that with a public Wi-Fi, we are going to have very clear information about the do's and don'ts of public Wi-Fi, and the obvious ones are things like internet banking and so on. We've got a very the provider that we're using is a friendly Wi-Fi provider, so they do a lot of screening, they do a lot of data security, but they also there will be certain sites that are not, you can't access through the public Wi-Fi, but there will be some really strong messaging going forth with that. In terms of your GPS, it's not using GPS signals for the mobile phone, it picks up MAC codes. It isn't tracking the individual. That MAC code is instantly scrambled or hashed and it's not stored. So it's very much anonymized data collection that we're doing. There isn't any way of connecting an individual to any of the information that we're collecting, if that makes sense. So I hope I've reassured that, but we are going to have really clear public information about the data security side of things, and there will be information that will be on the East Suffolk Council website, and we'll make sure that that is readily available for anyone at delivery. Do you see what I mean? Just in terms of delivery, we are expecting to okay, that's fine.
Yeah, no, that's great, thank you. And then I've got a comment from Danny Steele from Vision that says that the data will be great use in planning events for the town centre, and I'm sure that Vision will be really helpful and useful to have that.
Yeah, they've been amazing.
And
lastly, we're really enjoying working with Vision.
Danny hasn't listened to me because I said at the beginning we would be sharing a copy of all the presentations with everyone who attended today, and he's asked if he can have a copy. So yes, Danny, you can. Gabby will be sending out all the presentations from today to all 35 various people who joined us at some stage or other during the event. We have reached 5 o'clock and slightly overrun, but I think we've dealt with all the questions that have come up. I certainly covered all those in the Q&A, and I think I've covered all those in the chat as well. Yep, I think we've done that. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've managed to get through all those 4 presentations of connectivity. I hope you found them all really useful. I certainly have learned quite a bit more, including that there's dolphins in the harbour. And I hope this has been a useful couple of hours of your time to hear about presentations and the things that are happening in Lowestoft, and you can share that onwards. We, as the central team, will busily start to plan our next event for early next year, and update you on more projects as they come along. And obviously, if you're signed up to the ambassador scheme, if there's anything more urgent that we need to get a message to you, Gabby can send it all out through the portal to make sure you're all as up to date as you can be. Can I thank our 4 presenters, Charles, Richard, I think I saw Neil go, and Morag for their presentations. I'm sure you've really all enjoyed them. You can't clap because we won't hear you, but we'll take that for now. And can I thank you all very much for your participation today, and look forward to working with you all in the future. And I think, Gabby, you can stop recording.